Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with a DFS preview for this week's Sanderson Farms Championship. Gonna take a look at what you need to know heading into this week to build some of your GPP lineups and hopefully go out there and have yourself a week. So first, we'll take a look at the golf course, a few of the different key stats you might want to keep an eye on to go out there and select some of your top plays. And then towards the end, we'll go over 4 players that you should keep an eye on to potentially get to some exposure to in your lineups. More importantly, it'll be the types of metrics, the types of players that we're looking at that you might want to incorporate into your process to go out there and have a solid start to your week. So without further ado, a lot to talk about here. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. Jackson Country Club is not really a unique track, right? There's not really one key characteristic that separates the Country Club of Jackson from other venues on tour. In fact, if you take a look at some of the winners, they're about as sporadic as you can imagine. There are putting specialists like a Mackenzie Hughes, players that are short off the tee like a Ryan Armour, and on the complete flip side of that, right, the opposite of Mackenzie Hughes, you have Sergio Garcia winning this event, literally putting with his eyes closed. If you can go back, watch the highlights, he quite literally putted on Sunday without looking at the golf ball. And then on the flip side are the shorter hitters, like a Ryan Harmer, Cody Gribble winning back in the day. You have Cam Champ winning, Sam Burns, the elite tier bombers, getting it done around this golf course. So if you're trying to take a look at one specific skill set, this is not the week to do so. This golf course is wide open to pretty much any skill set. And more importantly than anything, you just have to play solid golf around here. So when we take a look at the key metrics, maybe a little bit less important around this sort of event, this sort of golf course, but still a few metrics that I'm using for this week to try and identify some of those high upside plays. So first and foremost, when it comes to iron play, you want to look at some of the long iron ranges, whether it's the par 3s, the plethora of at least average to longer par 4s. You're going to have mid to long irons in hand for at least about half of your holes. So whether it's 150 to 175, 175 to 200 yards, or any of the 200 plus yard buckets, you're looking at a slightly higher emphasis around Country Club of Jackson compared to other weeks on the PGA Tour. So that's something to keep an eye on. We do have pure Bermuda grass greens, so that's always something I'm looking at, when we have this surface, a highly polarizing surface. Guys either love or hate putting on Bermuda. Off the tee stats, always incorporated into the model, but this week, not really an emphasis on driving accuracy or driving distance. Birdie or better percentage, it is a relatively easy golf course. I've got course history on the model this week, looking at around the green on Bermuda. And in terms of comp courses, there aren't a ton that I like, but it's a lot of long iron fests. So you've got Golf Narashino for the Zozo Championship overseas in Japan. That is a long iron fest. Vedanta Vallarta, the home of the Mexico Open the last 2 years, also relatively long golf course. And this week, right, it's a par 72, but it's over 7,400 yards. So in fact, the scorecard yardage is lengthened a little bit this year. So imagine it's probably going to play even longer than what we've seen. Torrey Pines, another long iron fest. All of these courses look a lot different from the visual perspective, but all from the iron, ball striking perspective, ask a lot of the same questions from golfers. You can throw Corrales into that as well, another long par 72. So in general, you're not looking for one specific type of player, more just somebody that has some semblance of form. And form is just a huge question mark at this point, right? With the huge break that we've had over the last month or so. But more importantly, players that are just high pedigree, right? Over the last 50 or last 100 rounds that check some of these boxes that we're looking for, right? Like the long irons, Bermuda putting, birdie or better stats, so on and so forth. So with that being said, who am I going to play this week and what types of players do I think you should consider for your lineups? So we're going to go through a few plays towards the top, 2 core plays this week, and then 2 players in the 7K range. It'll help you save a little bit of salary. So a couple core plays, a couple value plays like we typically do here on the channel, condensed down into one video. So we'll start with the core plays, and first and foremost with Eric Cole, who is in that 10K range for I think the 3rd straight start that he's had. He's proving himself to be one of the more consistent players out of that young batch of players on tour, and also somebody that is seemingly due for a win at any point. We said the same thing about Cam Young at certain points. He obviously hasn't gone out there and won. Saying the same thing about Sahith Theegala for seemingly a year and a half on tour. It took him that long to win. So don't assume just because I'm playing Eric Cole this week that I assume he's going to win this golf tournament. In fact, the outright numbers on Eric Cole have left me still without an outright bet on him at this point. So a lot of times my core plays are people that I'm getting to for outright bets. But considering that the outright number on them just isn't, enough value for me to go out there and click it, I'm more so like I'm from the DFS angle. A few reasons why Eric Cole checks a few boxes. First and foremost, the Bermuda stats are ridiculous. The guy is at home on Bermuda. Obviously, it's his home surface down here in South Florida, but more importantly, a solid iron player. In fact, if we take a look at the last 36 rounds, he is by far the best iron player of anybody towards the top of the board. I'm gaining close to 3/4 of a stroke per round with his irons. Next best player would be a Steven Jaeger, right, gaining 0.3 strokes per round, and a lot of players in that 9K range that are losing like half a stroke or more per round with the iron play. So this 8K range, a little bit better. In fact, we're going to talk about a player here in just a minute or so that is checking the box emphatically with the iron play in the 8K range. But if you're looking for that consistent ball striking over the last 2-3 months of the season, you're really only going to get that from Steven Jaeger and then, of course, Eric Cole in bunches. And on top of that, with Eric Cole, you've got a stout short game, one of the best putters on the PGA Tour. And that's why the form for Eric Cole has been excellent, right? Let's go over here to the recent form. He had a 4th place last time, T25 at the BMW, which was about an average performance, right, given that that was a limited field event. But T31 at FedEx St. Jude was pretty sweet. Same thing with Wyndham, T14, T30 at the 3M Open. The guys just consistently going out there, making it to the weekend, but also mixing in these top 5, top 15 finishes, right? Like the 4th place at the Fortinet was GPP viable, especially even for a large field contest. But even like this T14 at his price tag, this T30 at the 3M Open are GPP viable sort of outcomes, right? And no, the T25 at BMW, right, maybe didn't get you there. Or this T31 at the FedEx St. Jude maybe wasn't the absolute nuts that week, but are still more than respectable enough performances. So the price tag's up there now, right? We're asking a little bit more from Eric Cole than just a top 25, right? When he's going to cost $10,300. But considering how weak this field is, I think he's got that upside, right? For that top 5, that top 10 finish. So $10,300, I think I like him even more for the DFS format than I do for some of the outright bets. And if you're looking for a player with form, course fit, really everything that you're looking for around this golf tournament, in my opinion, Eric Cole's that sort of player. Next up, we've got ourselves another absolute stud and a young up-and-coming sort of guy himself, right? Alex Smalley, been around a little bit longer than Eric Cole on tour. And if you're looking for that ball-striking form I was speaking of, he's checks that box the most of anybody, right? $8,000 and plus. So he's there at 0.9 strokes per round on approach, and that's over a 36-round sample size, right? So that's 9 events of making the cut out there, more than a few months of a sample size, and the guy's gaining a stroke per round, right? Including gains of 0.3 strokes off the tee, 0.1 strokes around the green. Overall, another consistent player, right, that has been making the weekend a lot more than not, but also mixing in some of that top end upside. So he didn't play a ton towards the end of the year, but you can see when he's played decently. Not much over this last 8-round sample size, but before that, especially towards the end of last season, when he found himself in weak field events, he made his presence felt, right? Multiple top 20 finishes. The made cut percentage last year was much better for Alex Smalley than it was during his rookie season, and just a player in general that I trust a little bit more than his peers because of that ball striking floor, right? He goes out there, he gains consistently both off the tee and on approach, and when you get into a weak field event like this, you're able to really lean into that, right? When you're one of the best players when it comes to tee to green play in stronger fields, right? Let alone here with a much weaker field than average on tour, right? You're going to have even more of separation to the field, right? Instead of a stroke, maybe 1.5 strokes per round gained, it might be 3.5, 4 strokes gained per round for Alex Smalley. So $8,900, you're paying much more than what you're used to for somebody like Smalley. But in this kind of field, we have to adjust our expectations a little bit when it comes to price tag. And considering that he's my number 2 course fit, has that 0.9 strokes gain per round on approach as a player that I'm definitely comfortable getting to. All right, real quickly before we hop into our last two plays, if you want access to everything you see on this video, right, including my modeling percentages that were blacked out over there on the modeling page, my player poll, all the modeling for every single player in the field, check out the Patreon page. There's a link down below. On there, you can get access to all of these spreadsheets, not only for the main slate every week, but also for Showdown for rounds 2 through 4. I do ownership, I do my player poll for every single slate, and of course, modeling projections to help you out with your process too. So it helps you out with not having to create your own projections. You can import all of mine that are data-based, use them, go out there, and hopefully take home some GPPs yourself. So meant to save you time, be a solid research resource that can go ahead and consolidate all that information for you and hopefully make you more of a winning player than you already are. So go ahead, check it out if that's something that you've been looking for, and goes a long way with helping the channel there as well, right? Gives you that information for yourself. But the last two plays we want to talk about here are going to be a little bit chalky, especially the first of the two that we go through here, but in my opinion are severe misprices, right? A solid maybe $1,000 too cheap. So Dylan Wu, $7,600, is my number one recent form ranked player. He's my number 2 ranked player, period, in the field. So the fact that he's only $7,600, he's number 29 in the pricing, is egregious, right? He should be at least $8,500, if not probably a $9,000 golfer, alongside somebody like an Alex Smalley. So a few reasons why. First off, the form has been extremely consistent, right? Almost too consistent, right? For somebody that's down here in the 7K range. So if you take a look at the starts, T14 last time out, T51, T5 are his last 3 measured starts. But before that, it's just made cut after made cut, including plenty of top 25s mixed in. If you take a look at the shots gained metrics, you may go, oh, well, it's fool's gold, right? Clearly, something's carrying his game. Well, not really, right? He's been very consistent across the board, and the 2 categories that he's quote-unquote carrying his game with are approach play, which is fantastic, right? And the putter, which is the other X factor that we're kind of looking for. So he's been a player that's been very sustainable, right? He's slightly losing off the tee, slightly losing around the green. I don't know if that worries me all that much when he's just been in an absolute electric factory with arguably the 2 most important stats with golf, right? Your putting is always going to be important, right? You have to have a putter to go out there and have a successful week. And consistent gainers like a Dylan Wu, right, are very valuable for that reason. But when he's also a really good iron player, right, he's setting up just birdie look after birdie look, well, that's where you get that top 10, top 20 upside, right? Where you start to get all that birdie or better upside that gets him to some of the fantasy scores that you see. That's why you gotta love a Dylan Wu here. So the ownership, I don't have calculated just yet. That's something that I'll be doing early on Wednesday morning. I have to imagine that he's going to be relatively popular. Probably the most popular player in this range, I would imagine. But considering that I think he's maybe $2,000 too cheap, probably a little bit more accurately like $1,000 to $1,500 too cheap, it's just a spot that I'm not able to pass up. So if you're in smaller field stuff, if you're in single entries cash, I would have no hesitation in playing a Dylan Wu. If you're in a large field GPP and you do need some differentiation, right, let's assume maybe the rest of your lineup's a little bit chalky, well, that's where this ownership comes into play. So, right, same thing with Eric Cole, right? Like, I think he's going to be really popular this week. Same thing with Aberg, like, he's going to be extremely popular. If you want to play somebody like those 3 people, just know you have to cater the rest of your lineup around them, right? Maybe take 1 or 2 pivots that you wouldn't have taken otherwise to account for the fact that you're taking an extremely popular option. So just keep that in mind, right, if you're going to take Dylan Wu this week. But like I said, smaller field stuff would have no hesitations getting to him. And the last play we'll talk about here is down at $7,300, and it's Kevin Yu, another player that I think is just severely mispriced. So if you take a look at the form, it doesn't look quite as good as it does fantasy-wise. If you just take a look at some of the starts, so you see 2 missed cuts in a row, that he does have that T37 finish. But if you take a look at his fantasy scoring, right, particularly when he makes it to the weekend, he's one of the best birdie or better makers in all of the field. In fact, he's a top 5 birdie maker in this field. So maybe not as egregiously mispriced as a Dylan Wu, right? That's also going to keep his ownership much lower, right, out here with Kevin. but also just I think is criminally underrated because a lot of people when they're doing their research are just looking at the shots gained, right? They're looking at finishes, so on and so forth, which is great, right? Extremely helpful, especially from the betting perspective. But when we're playing a fantasy game, right? When we're going out there and we're playing in GPPs on DraftKings, we probably want to look at DraftKings scoring, right? Birdie or better sort of stats. And there's a reason why birdie or better percentage is so weighed in my modeling, right? It's my number 4 stat this week, and it's just, a niche stat like birdie or better percentage out there, right? Dylan Wu, Kevin Yu down here, both of them have an insanely high birdie or better percentage, right? That's why they're popping in my modeling like they are. And for somebody like you that I don't think is going to get the ownership steam as somebody like a Dylan Wu, makes them even more attractive for those large field contests. So obviously a little bit of a different price range, right? Wu is up there at 76, Kevin Yu's down here at $7,300, so there's quite a gap there between them. But let's assume that you could just choose either player, right? One lineup you have is a little bit chalky, right? One's going to be a little bit lower owned, right? Just take the player that rounds out that lineup, right? If you're already a little bit contrarian, then take Dylan Wu, right? If you need a little bit of a contrarian nature, right, for your last pick, then maybe Kevin Yu's a really solid option for that. So those are my takes on my 2 value plays, but more than anything, right, we're looking for birdie makers that check a few boxes, right? Whether it's the long irons, whether it's the putter that we're looking for on Bermuda grass. You can see here Dylan Wu, a career gainer on Bermuda grass. Not quite as good as what we've seen over the last 36 rounds, but he's been on quite the heater over that stretch, so we probably wouldn't expect that to be the case. And then Kevin Yu, not really a good putter on any surface, but must I remind you, right? Sergio Garcia went out there and played well here with his eyes closed. So more than anything, right, we're just looking for pedigree more than anything, right? Fantasy scoring more than anything, right? Upside to finish in that top 10, that top 20, and undoubtedly these sort of players have that aspect to their game. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the DFS preview. Before you hopping out of here, go ahead, smash that like button for me. And also, for a chance to win a free month of my Patreon, go ahead and give me your winner for this week. If you're able to guess the winner after 72 holes, you go ahead, you'll get that free month. And just for full transparency, my winner this week, I'm going to go with Alex Smalley, right? Maybe not the chalky pick with an Eric Cole, and I'm sure quite a few of you will probably end up guessing this week. But yeah, Alex Smalley, just the irons have been clicking there for a while. If anything, I think he's even more due for a win than somebody like Eric Cole because he's been paying his dues for a year and a half out there on the PGA Tour. So let me know your hot takes down in the comments, and may everyone out there have a fantastic week, both from the DFS and prop angles. If you want access to the Patreon, you guys know where to find it. There's a link down in the description. Go ahead, sign up for the tier that best suits what you're looking for, whether it's props, DFS, for NFL, or for golf. I cover all of that on there, so there's something for everybody. So check it out if that's something that sounds like a good idea for you. And let's go ahead and have ourselves a week. Until next time, best of luck in those contests. Let's go out there and cash a few GPPs.